welcome to the Corona Online Congress. And today I'm very, very fortunate to have Dr. Ross Moss with me. And it's really very, very, much my great pleasure. And we were just having a laugh about this before we came online, that Ross and I actually live about 10 kilometers away from each other and not knowing each other at all. And I was very interested to find a permaculture expert, and did the usual internet web searching and came up with somebody who was 10 kilometers away from me. So it's just funny how these things go. But Ross, I'd like you just to start off by introducing yourself, and then once you've gone through the sort of introduction about your background and your teaching and your books that you've written and all of these kinds of things, and indeed a little bit about permaculture itself, we'd like to have a look at just actually what you're seeing out there in the environment, what you're seeing out there in the community around this coronavirus.
Right, no problems. Okay. Well, Ross Mars. I'm a permaculture teacher, author, designer and consultant, living with my wife in the hills east of Perth, about 30 kilometres east of Perth, and have been here for most of my life in WA. Basically, I'm heavily involved in education, permaculture education. We're starting to get permaculture delivered in schools, which is great, and that's snowballing. And the community themselves are also taking courses up and trying to become a little better at growing food and living better themselves.
Okay.
So I probably don't need to talk about all my books and things, but people can find things online pretty easily. So it's not hard to kind of track me down.
This is the normal reserve of an Australian for those watching from overseas. So
yeah,
Ross,
humble, very humble.
The humility of an Australian. That's absolutely right. So, and not all Australians are humble, by the way, but the good ones are. But anyway, I wonder, Ross, if you could. We will have links to your books and that type of thing available for people by the time they're watching it. So that'll all be posted up on the conference website as well.
Yeah.
But tell me, or tell our listeners about what you're actually seeing out there in the community. So, like, what you're observing, with this pandemic.
I think we could probably sum up the observations by a number of words, and they would be things like chaos, overreaction, panic, selfishness, desperation, and fear. And it's quite clear to see that most people are very vulnerable to catastrophe, and they have no mechanisms for resilience.
No mechanisms at all, eh? What would your interpretation of all of that be? So, like, how does that make you feel? How do you, and how do you analyze it? What's your analysis of it? So this is what you're observing. How do you analyze it?
I think the pandemic is really a wake-up call for people to live differently. And obviously we need to live more sustainably, grow some of our own food, reduce your consumption of energy and water, recover and cycle waste, help their neighbours and build community. Unfortunately, during all this panic, people are buying lots of vegetable seedlings, for example, which sounds great, but what they're doing is they're buying like 3 punnets of silver beet or broccoli, and they don't probably understand that once all this produce gets growing, there's going to be a lot of waste. And to be honest, after 3 days of eating silver beet, you're over it. So people probably just need to get 1 punnet of silver beet and 1 punnet of broccoli and allow other people to grow some as well. But they need to grow it properly. And because while their heart's in the right direction, they've got no idea about growing food, about, improving soil and the water requirements of plants and integrated pest management and companion planting, and so it goes. So I think the problem is that the pandemic just reinforces how dependent people are on the supply chains. And the issue would be they're probably very unprepared and uninformed about providing some of the basic necessities of life.
Yeah. So if we look at the topic of you know, the community, so obviously with your teaching, you're teaching people how to connect to the land, and you're teaching people how to you know, perhaps work together in terms of producing food and so on. Is there like you know, you talked about selfishness as one of the things that the pandemic's actually showing up, and that there's a choice out of it. You know, what's the root here? Like, how does that shift?
Oh, I think a lot of things have to happen. So I'm just trying to get a handle on your actual question. The problem would be that, you know, while I'm teaching people how to grow food and how to design resilient systems and how to build integrated systems, what people don't get is that while we love to grow food, we really need to grow soil. And so we need to do other things differently. We can't keep doing the things we've been doing. And as I mentioned earlier, a wake-up call just to get people to rethink about where they actually stand in the future of our civilization. So there's lots and lots of things that people can do. But the first thing to recognize is that change is inevitable, and it's time for change.
Okay. Well, that's a huge message. You know, change is inevitable, and my feeling, you know, about the you know, the coronavirus itself, is that its message is that, you know, like I said it in my own interview. I said that the message is, I am the pressure. I'm the pressure for change. And you know, like we, you know, have had other you know, very serious viral contagions. You know, SARS in particular, very much more vicious than the one that we've got at the moment. But these things are a wake-up call. They're a wake-up call to, you know, the whole way that we're actually approaching our bodies and so on. So, you know, I completely agree with you. Wake up or else, guys. So
Exactly.
So tell us about, you know, some methods that people could do. Like you've mentioned a couple of times already, you know, in our conversations about, you know, the fact that people have got little or no idea about how to grow soil. And that might sound like a strange thing to many people, but you know, particularly given that they would like to go to the, you know, the local department store and you know, buy some bags of you know, vegetable growing mix or something like this. But
Yeah.
what's actually, like, for a sustainable future, people do need to actually get connected to the dirt that's in their back garden. What do we do? What do people do? What's some practical things that people can do?
I think most people understand that civilizations are built on soil. You know, when the soil is depleted and we change forests into desert, then civilizations collapse. So we are losing lots of our topsoil. We're just putting in superficial fertilizers as a stopgap measure. But we need to build fertility. And once we build fertility, and the soil is the key, once you build fertility in the soil and you grow soil, the plants you grow will become healthy and their people will become healthy. And it's as simple as that. And so we just need to be able to work the land, improve the land, rehabilitate the soil. We can use any amount of composts and additives and amendments. The soil is easily changed. But we need to kind of start and to improve our surroundings and to grow healthy food. And that's basically as simple as it can be.
Okay. So the components of a healthy soil is that it's living, and what are the other components of a healthy soil?
Well, typically, you'd have to have, there's a few things. First of all, you need the kind of right balance of soil particles, you know, what we call loam, which is a nice balance of sand and silt and clay. So it's a bit hard growing things on rock-hard clay and in gutless sand, the same. So we need to kind of make sure we have this right balance. We also need to have some organic matter. But strange as it may seem, you only need about 5% of organic matter in the soil to grow food. You don't need a lot. But adding, you know, homemade compost to build the soil is great. And once you've got some compost happening in there and the microbes will come, and that's the important bit, is the microbes, is that you'll start to have, and that right balance of soil particles, you'll actually be able to hold more water. And when you hold more water, you'll have more life. And when you have more life, you have all those nutrients being able to be released to plants. And this is the cycle, and this is what we need to do.
Okay. So the actual, from what you're saying, beyond actually growing some compost, people just need to be aware of the fact that they need to have a bit of clay and a bit of sand and a bit of, loam.
Oh yeah, you just get a balance. People who live on clay know it's hard to dig holes and to grow things, and people who live on beach sand know the same. So, what you really want to do is to kind of try to work a way of kind of getting this kind of nice even blend. And when you've got a reasonable even blend of the soil particles and with the organic matter, you start to be able to grow anything.
Okay. Yeah. And it is largely the microbes that are supporting all of that.
Well, there are lots and lots of things in soil, not only the microbes, but we're talking about bacteria, of course, and they could be bacteria to, part of the nitrogen cycle, could be nitrogen fixing, etc. There could be some beneficial fungi in there. There's beneficial nematodes, there's beneficial mites. There's a whole food web under the ground, and we need to recognise that. So we need to take care of our soil.
Yeah. Well, when we look at the health environment for people, obviously, we have this tremendous microbial, variance actually within our bodies as well.
Yeah.
And nobody's ever been able to tell me how many viruses we have in our body, but we know we've got 70 trillion bacteria. And, so we must have at least 10 times that many viruses in our bodies. And, this notion that we don't want to have that variability is, to me, it's extraordinary. And it's interesting to hear, from the soil science perspective that you're bringing, is that it's an identical thing. It's completely mirrored.
Well, without microbes in our gut, we wouldn't be able to digest the food. That's basically how it all works. We rely on microbes to, assimilate the foods into our body and the nutrition and make it available. So having a healthy gut and eating good food and maintaining that is the key to healthy bodies. And one of the things in my head to overcome or to be a bit resilient to the virus is to be fit and healthy. And if you are fit and healthy and you're eating good food and you're exercising and so forth, and that's going to give you in good stead if the worst comes and you get infected. I know that people who smoke and people who have respiratory problems are very vulnerable. But just by trying to take supplements if we have to, but just eating good food and being sensible about what you eat and trying to be fit and healthy, I believe would be a good step in you surviving the virus, definitely.
Yeah, cool. So, given that we're focusing generally on health, so that we can manage, have a better immune system and that type of thing, and manage these outside factors like viruses coming through, and we've got a general principle, which is this is another wake-up call, and they're coming at us all the time. We're getting all this climate change issues, and all of these things are they're calls to action for me. That seems clear. And so, what would be the sort of behavior changes? Like, just talk through simple behavior changes that people could make.
Okay. All right. Well, I think the first one is to build some resilience in yourself and in your community. And that might mean kind of learning how to grow food, and it might mean how to preserve excess food, or to, install a rainwater tank or install a grey water system to water the gardens, that kind of stuff, to grow your food and fruit trees, but also to maintain communication with the community members. I think all those things is building resilience in community. So that's the first positive thing that people should be able to do, and when you do that, you're supporting local, you're buying local produce from local growers, and so we're kind of reducing our food miles. And so we're going through this period of transition where that's going to become more of the norm. And so that's what we need to kind of focus on. So resilience and skills in resilience is probably number one for me. I also think that you need to become self-reliant. Permaculture has never been about self-sufficiency, but self-reliance. So we never wanted to kind of grow all of our food and be hermits on a big acreage property. And in fact, you can't even grow all of your food and all the materials you need unless you've got a huge amount of land. But we can grow some things. We can grow things that work in your soil, in your climate, and if we have excess, then we can give them away to community members and we can kind of trade or barter or what we might do. So I think becoming self-reliant is probably the second thing. And the third thing I would think is don't become selfish and self-centered, only thinking of your immediate family. You need to think of others. And at the end of the day, all humans are one species. We all need each other. So you really need to think of others too.
Well, those are all great, great things that people can focus. Given that, people in many parts of the world are in a state of total panic and lockdown at the moment, so they're in what would be described as shock. What kinds of, what words would you have for them, to see a different kind of future, see that there's a possibility of a different future?
Well, with my permaculture background, I kind of view permaculture as like life itself. It's not a destination, but a journey. And it begins with the first step. And so we really need to start right now. I mean, do something to make a difference. Do something to kind of make the world a better place for everyone. No, not only for you and your family, but for everyone. So we need to work together, I think. And see if we can kind of work together to help each other, to support each other, certainly through this very difficult time. And I think we all can do that. I personally think there is light at the end of the tunnel. I think we shouldn't have to despair. We don't need to do that. And certainly all of us have the ability to change. We just need to probably start to change. And that's the take-home message. I mean, let's be the change.
Yeah. No, very interesting. Very, very interesting. So the point, as you say, the takeaway is to, is just to take a step. It's to take the baby steps.
Just start. Take the first step. Just recognise we need to change. You all have to start. Don't be frightened about jumping in. If you're waiting for something for you to be educated on how to grow food or to do things differently, you'll never get started. You really need just to say, let's just do it. And you'll make mistakes, but you'll move forward and hopefully in the right direction. And along the way, you're going to help others. So that's probably the thing we can all work. So we need to just take that first step and keep moving forward.
When we talk about building communities, Ross, for you, is it a matter of the very immediate community around you, so your near neighbours, or are you thinking in terms of different sorts of communities?
I think because of all the things that are happening in the world and what will happen with energy depletion and so forth, and the fact that we're running out of fresh water and a whole lot of other stuff, I think there's going to be a lot of immediate community, local community stuff where people will be working from home, people will be growing a lot of their own food, there'll be local employment, there may be less travel. So, building strong bonds with neighbours and the local community is going to be inevitable. It's just a matter of time when that's kind of more and more. But becoming involved in the community and supporting each other is some things you can do right now.
Yeah. Okay. What advice would you have to give to parents if they're trying to transcribe these sorts of ideas to their families? What advice would you give?
Well, I think parents sometimes need to understand that they probably just can't impose. It's like anything, you can't really impose your will sometimes on others. But if you, lead people by the hand and work with them, even children, and let them plant things and let them look after things and let them be immersed and grow things and get their hands dirty, and let them just see, what a rainwater tank does and how they can capture water and how you can use grey water on the gardens to water your fruit trees. And how you can recycle wastes and how you can make compost, and all these things are worthwhile things that this is what we need to educate children for. And I'm thankful that a lot of the stuff that actually is happening in schools, certainly in Australia, where there are lots of little school gardens and things happening where kids are learning to grow food and pick up snails from the garden and so forth and make compost. And it's integrated in the curriculum. So look, there is things happening, which is great, and we just need to make it happen everywhere.
Yeah, okay. So somehow that, as you say, like I appreciate that there are those initiatives for school children, and at school and that type of thing. Just my observation is that integration at home, it's almost as though the kids have got more to say about these topics than the parents do. The parents are sort of locked into this dependency.
Well, I think the millennials, or what the new generation's called these days, is obviously more in tune with environmental things than we were at that age. Certainly, young people are conscious about environmental change. They don't want to inherit a devastated world, and I think they're the ones that are coming up and building houses, but they're going to be passive solar designed, and they're going to have rainwater tanks, and they want to grow some food. And young people are learning, doing permaculture courses about how to do all that. And so that's the majority of people doing those courses are kind of, typically people in their 20s and early 30s, just starting with families and stuff.
Okay.
You get the occasional, grandparent one to come in, but the reality is the majority of people undertaking the course and learning how to grow food and buying seedlings is young people. And hopefully they're young families, and that'll just be second nature to them.
It will indeed, yeah. So I count my blessings. I grew up with a large vegetable patch and, a large number of fruit trees when I was a kid. And, it set me off down this path, without becoming a permaculture expert as you are. But it set me off on a path of knowing that I can actually grow food and I can dedicate to the land. And so
it's not hard, but you just need to have some skills, and just to kind of, things will die and you'll plant things again and you'll make mistakes, but at the end of the day, you will learn new things.
Yeah, absolutely. So you may well have already sort of explored this, but what would if you had a pedestal to stand on to give a pronouncement to the world, what would it be? What would be your big message? What would be your big message?
Oh, I think the big message was when I kind of talked about that a little earlier, and just to recap on that, was basically start on your journey. Make the first step towards a new life, a new beginning. Make the change in your own lives and the lives of your family for the better. And as you start on that journey, just carry others with you, and certainly support others in the community, and all work together. Because we will overcome this difficulty. There will be life after COVID-19. But hopefully it's a life where people will see there will be need to have change. We need to live more sustainably. We need to do things differently.
Thank you so much.
No worries.
That's marvelous guidance. People will be able to find your books and your other publications and access to the work that you're doing, your teaching on the website. So certainly recommend that there's follow-up in that way. Practical follow-up is to get some guidance, and that's part of the communities, and it's an interesting thing. So your message is all, in that very humble way that you have, that your message is become self-reliant, not self-sufficient, as you say, and I thought that was very nice that you described the difference between the two. But be self-reliant and take action and do these things. But for me, my message would be part of being self-reliant is actually to go and seek guidance as well.
Yeah.
So that's actually,
you need help. You can't just bumble along. There are people out there who can show you how to grow food, and how to live sustainably, how to build efficient, energy efficient houses, and how to, install rainwater tanks and plumb into your house. We have everybody doing that. There's nothing new. We have the stuff now. We've got all the materials. We've got the techniques. We've got the people. Just need to kind of take the time to find out a bit more about it for themselves, really.
very good. Well, once again, thank you so much.
Always, thank
you. We'll keep in touch. I'm sure we're going to keep in touch. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, bye-bye.